Hi guys, it's Miss Amanda here again. I'm getting ready for bed, and my favorite thing to do before I go to sleep is read a book. And I know Miss Flowers has been reading some chapter books for you older children, and so I thought that I would join in with some of my favorite books. So I've got my cozy blanket here. It's my favorite blanket. I wrap up in this blanket and I sit on my couch and I read a couple chapters of my favorite book before I go to sleep. And so the book that I wanted to share with y'all tonight, it's a series called The Magic Treehouse. And it is written by Mary Pope Osborne. There's a lot of books in this series. It was my oldest favorite series. She read every single one of them. And now I'm sharing them with my middle child. And so I thought I would share them with you too. The very first one in the series is called Dinosaurs Before Dark. And so I thought tonight, if you would like to, we would read the first couple of chapters and see if you like it too. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce you to a couple of my friends that I brought with us. I brought my Stegosaurus to come and listen to our story about dinosaurs. Also brought my Bronchiosaurus. And then, of course, I had to bring the T-Rex. Ooh, he's kind of scary, isn't he? All right, well, they're going to sit here, and they're going to watch us read. And I hope you'll listen and love it as much as I do. And we'll start with Chapter 1. And Chapter 1 is titled, Into the Woods. "Help, a monster," said Annie. "Yeah, sure," said Jack. "A real monster in Frog Creek, Pennsylvania?" "Run, Jack," said Annie, and she ran up the road. Oh, brother, this is what he got for spending time with his 7-year-old sister. Annie loved pretend stuff, but Jack was 8 and a half. He liked real things. "Watch out, Jack. The monster's coming. Race you." "No, thanks," said Jack. Annie raced alone into the woods. Jack looked at the sky. The sun was about to set. "Come on, Annie. It's time to go home." But Annie had disappeared. Jack waited. No Annie. "Annie!" he shouted again. "Jack, Jack, come here." Jack groaned. "Ugh, this better be good," he said. Jack left the road and headed into the woods. The trees were lit with a golden late afternoon light. "Come here," cried Annie. There she was, standing under a tall oak tree. "Look," she said. She was pointing at a rope ladder. The longest rope ladder Jack had ever seen. "Wow," he whispered. The ladder went all the way up to the top of the tree, and there, at the top of the tree, was a tree house. It was tucked between two branches. "That must be the highest treehouse in the world," said Annie. "Who built it?" said Jack. "I've never seen it before." "I don't know," said Annie. "But I'm going up." "No, we don't know who it belongs to," said Jack. "Just for a teeny minute," said Annie, and she started up the ladder. "Annie, come back." But she kept climbing. Jack sighed. "Annie, it's almost dark. We have to get home." But Annie disappeared into the treehouse. "Annie!" Jack waited a moment. He was about to call again when Annie poked her head out of the treehouse window. "Books!" she shouted. "What?" "It's filled with books." Oh, man. Jack loved books. He pushed his glasses into place. He gripped the sides of the rope ladder, and up he went. And I'm going to show you a picture because my chapter book does have pictures in it. So there's their treehouse. Way high up in the sky. See, he's going up the ladder to get into the treehouse. And that's the end of chapter 1. So now we're going to chapter 2 called The Monster. Jack called through a hole in the treehouse floor. Wow, the treehouse was filled with books, books everywhere. Very old books with dusty covers, new books with shiny bright covers. "Look, you can see far, far away," said Annie. and she was peering out the treehouse window. Jack looked out the window with her. Down below were the tops of the other trees, and in the distance he saw the Frog Creek Library, the elementary school, and the park. Annie pointed in the other direction. "There's our house," she said. And sure enough, there was their white wooden house with the green porch. Next door was their neighbor's black dog, Henry. He looked very tiny. "Hi, Henry," shouted Annie. "Shush," said Jack. "We're not supposed to be up here." He glanced around the treehouse again. "I wonder who owns all these books," he said. He noticed bookmarks were sticking out of many of them. "I like this one," said Annie, and she held up a book with a castle on the cover. "Here's a book about Pennsylvania," said Jack, and he turned to the page with the bookmark. "Hey, there's a picture of Frog Creek in here," said Jack. "It's a picture of our woods." "Oh, here's a book for you," said Annie, and she held up a book about dinosaurs. A blue silk bookmark was sticking out of it. "Let me see it." Jack set down his backpack and grabbed the book from her. "You look at that one, and I'll look at the one about castles," said Annie. "No, we better not," said Jack. "We don't know whose books these belong to." But even as he said this, Jack opened the dinosaur book to where the bookmark was. He couldn't help himself. He turned to a picture of an ancient flying reptile, a pteranodon. He touched the huge bat-like wings. "Wow," whispered Jack. "I wish I could see a pteranodon for real." Jack studied the picture of the odd-looking creature soaring through the sky. "Ah!" screamed Annie. "What?" said Jack. A monster!" cried Annie, and she pointed to the treehouse window. "Stop pretending, Annie," said Jack. "No, really," said Annie, and Jack looked out the window. A giant creature was gliding above the treetops. He had a long, weird crest on the back of his head, a shiny beak, and huge bat-like wings. It was a real, live pteranodon. The creature curved through the sky. He was coming straight towards the treehouse. He looked like a glider plane. The wind began to blow. The leaves trembled, and suddenly the creature soared up high in the sky, and Jack nearly fell out of the window trying to see it. The wind picked up. It was whistling now. The treehouse started to spin. "What's happening?" cried Jack. "Get down!" shouted Annie. Look, there's the pteranodon flying in the sky. And there's Jack trying to see it. She pulled him back from the window, and the treehouse was spinning faster and faster. Jack squeezed his eyes shut. He held on to Annie. And then everything went still. Absolutely still. Jack opened his eyes. Sunlight slanted through the window. There was Annie, the books, and his backpack. The treehouse was still high up in an oak tree, but it wasn't the same oak tree. All right, that's the end of chapter 2. Should we read one more chapter tonight before we go to sleep? I think we should too. Chapter 3, Where is he? Jack looked out the window. He looked down at the picture in the book. He looked back out the window. The world outside and the world in the picture, they were exactly the same. The pteranodon was soaring through the sky. The ground was covered with ferns and tall grass. There was a winding stream, a sloping hill, and volcanoes in the distance. "Where are we?" stammered Jack. The pteranodon glided down to the base of their tree. The creature coasted to a stop and stood very still. "What happened to us?" said Annie, and she looked at Jack, and he looked at her. "I don't know," said Jack. "I was looking at the picture book, and then you said, 'Wow, I wish I could see a pteranodon for real,'" said Annie. "Well, yeah, but then we saw one in the Frog Creek woods," said Jack. "Yeah, and then the wind got loud, and the treehouse started spinning," said Annie. "And we landed here," said Jack. "And we landed here," said Annie. "So that means," said Jack. "So that means what?" said Annie. "Nothing," said Jack. He shook his head. "None of this can be real." Annie looked out the window again. "But he's real," she said. "He's very real." Jack looked out the window with her, and the pteranodon was standing at the base of the oak tree like a guard. His giant wings were spread out on either side of him. "Hi!" Annie shouted. "Shush," said Jack. "We're not supposed to be here." "But where is here?" said Annie. "I don't know," said Jack. "Hi!" Annie called again to the creature, and the pteranodon looked up at them. "Where is here?" Annie called down. "You're nuts. He can't talk," said Jack. "But maybe the book can tell us." Jack looked down at the book, and he read the words under the picture. This flying reptile lived in the Cretaceous period, and it vanished 65 million years ago. No, impossible. They couldn't have landed in a time 65 million years ago. "Jack," said Annie, "he's nice." "Nice? Yeah, I can tell. Let's go down and talk to him." "Talk to him?" Annie started down the rope ladder. "Hey!" shouted Jack, but Annie kept going. "Are you crazy?" Jack called. Annie dropped to the ground and stepped boldly up to the ancient creature. And there's Annie trying to go talk to the pteranodon. And that ends chapter 3. And so tomorrow night we'll pick up with chapter 4. Tomorrow night we can pick up with chapter 4 and see what happens to Jack and Annie with the pteranodon. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope you have a good night's sleep, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.